Good morning. It's 11 a.m. Many people are feeling like today is a Monday, but it's not. It's a Tuesday.
The Monday, Tuesday.
And the markets are a moving. I am very interested in a lot of stuff I'm seeing here. And luckily, I'm lucky. People at home may not know this while we wait for everyone to join us. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Zoom here on YouTube. Um, People might not know this. We're in the same office every week when we do this. Like back behind me over there is Gunner. Secret. We're not going to tell anyone else. So if you're here early on the call, you understand that this secret exists. Anyway, I was talking to Gunner earlier today in the office, and there's a bunch of very interesting stuff happening in the markets. So the stuff that we're going to dive into today, we're going to go through our normal stuff. We're going to look at top trades. We want to see what's going on in the markets, areas that we like, trades that Gunner looks at. But we've even got some stuff that it's just it's contrarian. It's actually contrarian. And there's a bunch of interesting narratives shaping up. And one of the things Gunner said a few minutes ago was, you know this if you've been on this call for a long time, but price leads the news. So these charts are telling us something. There's several different charts that we're going to get into. They're in different sectors. They're telling us something. And the key is for us to decipher it and find out if these are short-term swing trades like you do in the trading desk, or if they're longer-term buy and holds, or if they're
Both. What
secular
about
times.
both?
Both. I like that as well. So, Gunner, it's 11:01 here. We might as well get kicked off because this short week, it's got traders. So, you only have a little bit of time to make your money this week.
Well, it's true. And, it's interesting. We had a bit of a choppy week last week. And Matt, I'm sorry you couldn't join us last week and that you were out of town, but we had a good time without you. But we did have some hard resets in the market last week. There was a little bit of chop, and it started to look like toward the middle of the week that we might be heading into choppy summer trading where you get a lot of breakouts that don't stick, you get a lot of breakdowns that flip back around and go back into their choppy ranges. But Friday erased all of that. So on Thursday, we had a big, nasty red candle. It looked like the market was going to hell. And then on Friday, it was like, well, no, not really. And everybody stepped up and started buying again. So like I said in the chat this morning, for those of you who weren't with us, these big reversal days, these big potential reversal days that we see in the markets, they're not reversal days until you get the follow through in whatever direction you think the market is reversing in. And we really didn't get it. That doesn't mean the market won't be choppy moving forward. I do think we're going to eventually stumble into that typical summer trading where you get a lot of back and forth. I mean, after all, we had an absolutely huge first quarter. We've had a nice snapback from that April pullback right there. So, I don't think it's going to be out of the question to see stocks take a breather at some point this summer to move sideways, to maybe correct a little bit. We'll see what happens. We'll just go with the flow. But for right now, stocks are looking strong. The S&P hanging in there. And you see that big red candle sort of sticking out like a sore thumb if we zoom in a little bit. This looked like everybody was starting to panic on Thursday right there. And you can see why. Opening there, gapping up to new highs, and then just sell all day. It was a very low volume week. A lot of people were pointing out that it was just as low volume as you would see between like Christmas and New Year's. Just nobody was in the market right there, just waiting for the next shoe to drop. And then lots of sellers coming in on Thursday, taking the market all the way down. It wasn't a huge loss, but at the same time, after this big snapback and push to new highs, I think it did spook a lot of people, but buyers stepped in on Friday. And then today, market's kind of flattish, but at the same time, there's still a lot of really interesting stuff percolating out there. Obviously, I mean, I don't really need to click on the heat map to show you guys this, but the big green square is back in action today. The world beating NVIDIA, which just refuses to slow down and is gobbling up everything in its sight, up another 5% today because, hey, why not? NVIDIA only goes up and until it doesn't. But that's what we're dealing with right here. It's a semiconductors market, and we are just passengers along for this crazy ride right here. We've traded AMD. We have done our best to sort of trade around this. Obviously, we really can't trade NVIDIA because options are just way too expensive until they do that big split coming up next month. And I think it's right here. This is when it's happening. So let's all look forward to that. We've got a 10-for-1 split in NVIDIA coming up. on June 10th, it looks like, on Monday. So after that, let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can get in there and play this thing. And let's see where it is from there. As you can see, after this last earnings report right here, big gap higher, and it just hasn't slowed down. Up almost 10% on Thursday. It was one of the only stocks up at the end of the day. That was the day of the big red candle, not NVIDIA. NVIDIA only goes up, like we said. Friday, it just continued that move higher with another 3% higher. And then today it's up another 5% because, hey, why not? Like I said, it's NVIDIA. Just a truly epic move from this stock that seems to have captured everybody's attention. And every time you think it's run out of gas, it just continues to shoot higher. And that's, and Matt, we talk about this a lot, but that's part of trading, leaving whatever those biases you might have behind and just sort of agreeing to go along for the ride. And with a stock like this, it's very easy to go in there and start digging around and making all kinds of valuation arguments. You can twist them one way or the other, but the reality is right here in front of us, and that's price. And this is a stock that broke out very strongly from $500 and has doubled and hasn't looked back. And it is what it is.
It's crazy. I mean, the other thing to say, just on a day like today, there's really no news that I know of, right? It's up 5%.
Yeah.
Its market cap is like 2.8 trillion. So we're talking, this is like $100 billion plus move just today.
Yeah, no big deal.
Crazy.
And all those, and you'll see all the clickbait articles that come out now, and they're all going to be the same. It's all going to be like NVIDIA is now worth as much as this company plus the GDP of Germany. You know what I mean? And they're gonna continue to bombard us with that until this thing starts going down. Which, I mean, it will eventually, but I think what we had right here was essentially like a giant repricing shock, because you have a situation where you have this massive demand from AI, and the market was basically telling us that no one really knew how to measure it properly. And that's what happens when you have these kind of moments in the market, when you have stocks that go straight up like this, because you go from this information void to starting getting new information about a company or an industry or a big trend, and it all just starts blowing up, and then no one can buy fast enough. And that's what's happened with stocks like NVIDIA, and that's why the narrative is shifting for stocks like AMD, like SMCI. All this new information is just flooding into the markets, and every time a Google or a Microsoft or even Amazon or Apple, every time these guys report earnings and start talking about AI and what they're spending on AI, everybody is reconfiguring how much money is going to be flowing into these chips. How much money NVIDIA could be making off of this, and because they are like a vacuum sucking up all the demand for this stuff.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say, that we've got the chat going on in YouTube, and if you've got any questions, want to say hi, whatever, throw it in the chat here in YouTube. But Ken B was asking, where's all this money coming from? And then Eric went ahead and answered for us. He's like, hey, the Fed's printing money, or the government's spending money. There's dollars out there. And it almost makes you think Paradigm might have a few conspiracy theorists around, but like the CHIPS Act comes through, there's all this buying, and it won't stop with all this made up money, basically. Maybe that's what's happening. Chips are here, and someone knows something, and this thing just keeps going up. It's crazy.
Right. Someone knows something now they didn't know 6 months ago. And that's what's driving the market right now, obviously. So, yeah, we have these situations, and obviously NVIDIA is not the only one, but it's the most visible one in this group right here. But it really is dominating the entire market narrative. And it's pretty incredible that it's been able to maintain that for the entire year. I mean, yeah, we had some other news happening here and there, some geopolitical tensions here and there, a little bit of talk about energy, but not too much. But for the most part, AI and NVIDIA specifically have dominated the news cycle, and they continue to do so. I bet you if I walked around that corner right there and broke the fourth wall and stood behind you and looked at that TV right over there, they'd be talking about semiconductors. If I stood in front of the TV for the next 5 minutes, one of those tickers would come up on CNBC, and someone would start, chatting about why you need to buy this, why this is the next NVIDIA. It's ubiquitous at this point.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's setting the stage right. And again, we're here on Top Trades. We talk about all sorts of things general. It's a little bit more general than what you do at your paid service, the trading desk. Because a lot of people might say, oh, why are we covering NVIDIA, or why are we covering XYZ? Like, this is a sign of the times. Again, you got to know what's going on. When you look at that heat map, you can see why we'd want to talk about this. It's huge. It's a whale, It's the brightest, biggest square, and that heat map is where money is moving around stocks. So if you're wondering what we're doing here, we got to pay attention to these big things because as Nvidia goes, maybe the market goes.
Right. And I think a big question that everybody's been asking is what's going to be the next big thing, and they're always going to frame it as the next NVIDIA because that's going to resonate with people. But I
Hmm.
think also like in tech, what is going to be the next thing that really starts to move and really starts to capture people's attention? What has a good elevator pitch? What's that next big story that everybody's going to grab onto? I think, and this is one of the big things I wanted to talk about in today's call, I think it could be the resurgence of the green energy trend. And I think we're starting to see that sort of thing. Now, before I get into it, this is not me talking about, like these companies as important, as politically important, or any of that stuff. This is me purely dissecting price and what I'm seeing in the market. So you can have whatever political uh, belief you want to about renewable energy, green resources, solar, wind, nuclear, all that stuff. That doesn't matter. I'm talking about what I'm shifting. What I'm seeing is a shift in the market in what people are buying, and it's happening very, very quickly. And that gives way to the idea that this could be a major change in trend happening right here. Because honestly, a lot of these stocks have looked absolutely terrible lately. But that's all starting to change, and it's all beginning to change with a stock that had been performing very poorly up until a few months ago, and that's First Solar. This thing has broken out in a massive, massive way over the past week. I mentioned it briefly last week as just a crazy mover, and we've talked about it weeks prior to that as a stock that was potentially basing out because I saw some chatter about it online. But I did not foresee this huge, huge move, this huge breakout of $200, taking it all the way up above 280 as it's done right here. I mean, this move in itself, the initial move last Tuesday, where it was up 8%, that felt like a crazy move to me, just out of nowhere, out of the blue. And then look at the follow up. I mean, it was up almost 20% the day after, and it has not stopped.
Yeah.
Uh, the big red day for the market was last Thursday, and First Solar was barely red. And then on Friday, it kept rolling again. It was up double digits. It has not slowed down right here. And if we zoom out, you can see just how big this breakout is right here above those highs from just a year ago in May of 2023. This stock has just reignited and moved higher out of nowhere, out of the blue. And it seems like a lot of money now is starting to flow into a lot of the secondary trades throughout kind of the clean green energy complex, if you want to call it that. Some of the equipment stocks, some of the semiconductors that are involved in these, other crappier solar names are starting to move too. So I'm wondering if this isn't going to be the big trade of the summer, all kicked off by FSLR. And if that is the case, are we going to see a bigger rotation in the markets? And, Matt and I talk about this a lot, where we try to figure out where all that money is flowing, like Matt said. So if we have a situation where, let's say the semiconductors, the big semiconductors, your SMCIs, your AMDs, your NVIDIA, if those get a little too hot, and I think you could argue that, you look at the NVIDIA chart and you could say, okay, this thing is just posting runaway gap after runaway gap. When's it going to finally cool off? This is not a stock I would just go out and buy up here. Just to be perfectly clear, I wouldn't go out and say, "Hey, this is a great buy here at $1,100. This is where I want to get in." I think it's going to need to rest at some point. I could be wrong. Like I said, Nvidia doesn't go down, so maybe it'll just throw it back in my face. But at the same time, where is the hot money going to go next? And judging by this First Solar breakout right here, I'm thinking we're going to start seeing a lot of traders start moving in that direction, especially if we see some of these market leaders start to get choppy or flatten out or correct a little bit heading into June. Summer trading months, not a lot going on. We get to the summer doldrums where the market just chops along. Maybe that leaves a little bit of room, a little bit of wiggle room for these particular stocks to shine. And so I've been digging into
There it is.
what's
Hold that. See, you're on screen share right now. People couldn't see that. It was probably real teeny. Don't worry about it. Maybe that's even better. It's a tease.
so yeah. So what
He's
I'm
got a physical list. He's printed it out with all these. Are they like secondary green space stuff?
I'm just looking at what I'm looking up these green energy funds, and I'm seeing what their big holdings are. Like what are the professionals buying in these groups? Obviously First Solar is a major holding, and it's usually the top holding in a lot of these in a lot of funds. You're going to see other stocks in there too, and I'm going to go down the list of the ones that I'm seeing. There's Enphase right here, which is starting to firm up. And again, look at this. Not as nice as the First Solar chart, obviously, but one theme you're going to notice as I start going through all these, not all of them are going to look great, but all of them look like they're trying to bottom out and move higher. So while they might not be buys today, they might not be buys this week, these are the stocks that I'm putting on my list to watch because I feel like they're firming up. And if First Solar continues to do what it's doing and we start to see that media narrative shift and everyone's talking about green energy or whatever else, this is the stuff you want to be looking at right here. Next up, and this is just Enphase is a solar play. If we move beyond some of the solar stuff, I think we might see some renewed interest in some of the secondary electric car makers out there that have been trying to base out for a while, because those are also being held by a lot of these funds. You guys know Rivian. What if Rivian is the next big snapback trade after basically falling off a cliff into the abyss right here? It just reported earnings, and you can see by the red E right here, they weren't that great. Not so shocking. Negative surprise on earnings right there. But the stock has not moved lower. It had this huge waterfall lower, this huge breakdown below $10, and it went all the way into the eights. It's back above this $10 range right now. It has not moved lower from here. I think there was a lot of folks thinking over the past 18, 24 months, maybe longer, that Rivian might be a concern. Rivian might not make it. It might not be able to get out of its own way. Its vehicles are too expensive. They're too expensive to repair. Tesla's eating their lunch. You could take your pick of whatever narrative you want to talk about when it comes to Rivian and why it's behaving like it's behaving. But what if this is a situation right here? And let me extend this line a little bit. What if this is a situation where we saw the worst of the worst right here ahead of these earnings that we got just a couple weeks ago in early May? The stock was well below $10. People started talking about it being a potential zero, and then earnings come back. They weren't great, but the company is still with us. It's still here. What if the situation quickly starts to change and narratives start to spin in the other direction? I'll give you kind of an example of something that's happened recently, and that would be with Carvana. These are two totally different companies, obviously, even though they both, are related to automobiles. But Carvana was one of those stocks where everyone thought it was done and it was going to be a big fat zero, and it comes back from the dead and it does this. Oop, missed my click. So very similar situation with Carvana if we zoom in. Back in late 2022, early 2023, people were talking about Carvana going bankrupt. And we've said this before on the call. One of the most bullish things you can do as a company is have everybody think you're going to go bankrupt and then not go bankrupt and come back from it. And that's exactly what happened with Carvana right here. I don't know what the future holds for this stock, but this is another one of those cases of expectations changing in real time very dramatically and it affecting price in a very, very quick fashion. And you can see here the big initial reaction off of those lows, not an identical chart to Rivian, but at the same time, I think it's the thought that counts here, where you have a big waterfall lower right here, heading into early December, 3 big red candles, down 42% in a day. And I bet you there was news on that day. Matt, I bet you me and you were even talking about it back in early December, that this thing was going under. Everybody was talking about it. And then you see how it levels off, and then something changes in January and it starts to take off. Okay. Yeah, it needed to reset a couple times, but then it got moving again and it broke out from that base. And it was one of the best performing stocks of the year in 2023. And it's still going. I mean, every single earnings that it posts, it seems to get a gap higher. This is a this is a stock that was going to be a zero, and it was trading what? Below $4, and it's over $100 now, just 18 months later. That's pretty incredible. Now, I'm not saying Rivian's going to be $1,000 stock, But at the same time, I think it's very interesting that we're starting to see a little bit of a sea change within this industry right here. And maybe about the way people are talking about it. Maybe it's not going to be totally dominated by Tesla news. Maybe we start to move down here to these also ran plays that are being held by these green energy funds. And maybe these really catch a spark and really get moving. Again, Rivian's up today, not too much, but if you're looking for something to maybe take a flyer on and buy a few shares of, as you know, if it continues to move higher here, if it breaks out above $11, this is a great opportunity, I think, because number one, it's really close to a big pivot point right there, and you know when you're wrong, which is a great thing to know. You're not reaching up and trying to buy Nvidia at $100 or at $1,100. You're buying something near its lows that's starting to base out, that's starting to move here. And then if it does break out here and start to fill this gap up toward $15, you're sitting on some really nice gains and you can move your stop up and you have a really nice cushion right there. This might be a great position trade to take. And there might even be a worse one out there in Lucid. Again, very similar action here where bad earnings, even more red than we saw with Rivian right here. No one likes this company. I think Lucid's probably in worse shape than Rivian. This chart looks like it's trying to base out. It hasn't moved lower since reporting those earnings in early May. It even got a nice little bump right there. It was up 11% on the day just a week and a half ago on the 14th. It's trying to put in a higher low right here. I think there's some renewed interest in these stocks. I think some people are buying these things thinking that it's going to be the next move higher. It could fail, but if it does, you know where you sit if you try to buy something like this at the lows. I think I like Rivian better than Lucid at this point, but at the same time, getting something right here as it tries to come out of the base, and maybe you give it some more wiggle room. You say, okay, I'm going to wait and try to get this thing once it's above $3. That's fine. I'd rather buy a little bit higher once it has its sea legs underneath it. But at the same time, I think there's opportunity in some of these plays, and even some of the trashier like fuel cell and battery companies. They're all starting to kind of wake up and do the same thing, and they've stopped going lower, and that's the big thing. Stop the bleeding, and then see what's going to break out. And I think you have some good trades on your hands.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, they are very unpalatable. Anyone that's sitting there in an armchair watching the markets, they do not want to have anything to do with green energy, just like the China trade. No one wants to have anything to do with it. Enrique's in the chat, and he was saying too, they've got a decent amount of short interest. So you're going to run into, because everyone and their mother probably ran to that side of the boat. They want to short these things. So not only could you get a bottoming out, a little basing action, then you get a little bit of short covering. You're setting up for something pretty decent. And let the record state, I love the green new scam and everything Jim Rickards talks about. This is a trade opportunity, right? I'm not saying Rivian makes good cars. I'm not saying First Solar is profitable. They can make a little bit of money, but long-term profitability. So who knows? But these trade-wise, this is a very interesting trade. And both those, like the Rivian, if you pull up the Rivian chart, that looks like, hey man, you get a little bit of action there. You're doubling from there. And if not, you're putting a nice 50-60% gain in the stock. That's not even an option.
Yeah. And again, the best part is, like Enrique commented, there's a lot of people that think these are going to go lower. The narrative on them is totally biased to the downside. And when you're wrong, you're going to know if this thing, if this thing starts digging into like the mid nines right here, it's not ready to go yet. You can put a pretty decent stop on it, and you don't have to grab a lot of shares either. If it's going to explode higher, you don't need to, bet the whole house on something like this. It's a really cool point where you can try to buy something. I think you wait for a little bit of confirmation that they're going to continue higher here. I don't think you really need to grab them right now. But at the same time, it does feel like these stocks are starting to set up. And then, you go across the space and you start looking at the fuel cell type stuff. You look at Bloom Energy. It's starting to move in a big way right here. And again, very out of favor industry, out of favor stocks right here. And they're starting to catch a lot of interest. Last week, up 17% in a day. It followed that up with a 12% move. It got above these swing highs right here from December of 23, above $15. I mean, look, even earlier this year, this thing started the year at like $14. And then by the time it announced earnings in mid-February, it was down below $10. I mean, really pathetic looking stock. And now all of a sudden, snapping back higher. Moving down to some of the trashier names that I've traded in the past that were great trading stocks. And we've talked about these before, like Plug. I mean, this thing was an absolute disaster for quite a long time, and it's starting to wake up a little bit. I mean, I don't really know if I would like be too quick to pull the trigger on something like this. I mean, you can see just how terrible this chart looks going back to the heydays of the meme stock trading in January 2021 when it was 65 bucks. But down here, it's attracting some attention. Big volume days right here. It didn't really follow through on this huge move up toward $5, but it still ended up 20% on the day. It filled that gap a little bit and is now trying to push higher right here. I think Blink is another one. Again, not breaking out, but trying to base out here. And this is these are charge points, right? Blink charging, Matt. You got the
Yeah,
fundamentals
Blink.
of this guy.
Yeah. No, I don't. Let's just. It could all be made up. We don't know. We think there's some. We think there's some Blink chargers out there at some point in time. But it wouldn't surprise me if they were like, oh yeah, the whole thing was just made up.
Well,
No, I'm
right.
just kidding. They sell charging, Blink charging. They're like little charging things for EVs.
I think I've actually seen them in the wild, believe it or not. I
Yeah.
don't have an electric car, but I
It's all
think
those spots that you want to park in at the grocery store, but they're taken up by emptiness. And then
right.
it's
And
great.
a broken charger. So yeah,
Again, these are all good things. This is fundamentally speaking, this is a horrible looking spot.
right.
Everyone, it might be in the top level of like everyone hates it.
Sure, yeah, but again, that could work in its favor.
Exactly.
If we have a super fast narrative switch, if somebody flicks the light switch on and these things start running, they can run big. And again, this thing has definitely bottomed out in the twos. Buyers came in on three or four separate occasions here, going all the way back to October of 2023, where they're scooping up shares in the $2 range, and it hasn't broken out yet. I think this is such a damaged name that it's probably going to be a choppy move. It's not just going to shoot straight up. I don't know. That's just a guess. But at the same time, it's trying to firm up right here, and it's moved significantly off its lows from late April. So I think it's something worth watching. And again, like these are names that I haven't looked at in years, that I haven't been interested in. And all of a sudden they're starting to pop back up on my radar. I think that says something too. There's F-Cell, and that was one you pulled out of a hat. This was an old trading stock from back in the day too, that was a great mover. It was really great to swing trade. And it's been dead money walking for quite some time right now. I mean, look how bad that chart looks. I don't look at that. Just going to zoom back in. But again, is something like this trying to base out and trying to change whatever the hell that garbage was that we just saw right there? Is this the end of some sort of big downtrend in these names? And if so, is the narrative going to shift enough so some of these trashier names start to move higher again? This is obviously less than $1. I don't know if this is something I would buy. This is just an old ticker that I dug out of the blue. But you can see a lot of the same stuff is starting to happen where all this volume is coming back in and someone's buying these things and sending them up. Like last Tuesday, it was up 24% out of nowhere. So my question is, what the heck is going on, and will it sustain? And are these stocks going to continue to break out? And are we going to get a few more charts that look like FSLR and really start to take off?
Can you bring up SLDP? That's Solid Power. Again, another SPAC, another battery company.
Yeah, these are like all under $5, a lot of these stocks. And again, the more you go back, and this must be where it's SPAC right here in 2021.
That's where they wrote the check.
The magic $10 mark right here. And you can see how it traded above $10 for a couple months. and it never found $10 again. So this thing has been in a downtrend, for the better part of the past 3 years. And now we got those lows in back from early January, and it's been trying to build off of those steadily. And again, I don't know if Solid Power is a good company or what its prospects are, but you're starting to see a trend here. You're starting to see like a lot of these charts are beginning to look the same, where they're trying to base out and trying to change these awful downtrends that they've been in. I think it's totally reasonable to say that some of them aren't going to survive, and that we'll have some that try to break out and others that just fall back off the face of the earth. That's entirely possible. But I do think it's interesting that the narrative hasn't shifted yet, but we're already seeing price start to tell us something. And so my antenna is up, paying attention to some of these names, maybe not some of the ones that are $1, $2, but at the same time, across that industry, across multiple industries in this sort of green energy sector, if you want to lump them all in there, I think there's a lot of interesting movers right here. And once again, if we're in a situation where the big boys, the Mag 7s, your semis, all the stuff that works so well during the first half of the year, if all those stocks decide they need an extended breather, an extended break, is this going to be the next group that takes the baton and runs? I think it's entirely possible and very much worth watching over the next few weeks.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of stuff here. And like you said, price is leading the way and the narrative might follow in and we can fill it in with whatever. Maybe it's electricity. And again, Enrique's on the same, I'm referencing him because he's on the same beat with us. But looking at, there's a lot of electricity stocks out there that are moving, like CEG was up a bunch on Friday. And that one was when I started looking at Enphase because it's like maybe there's just some sort of like knock-on effect where some of these green power plays and battery plays are going to be usable in the electricity space in the next 18 months when we get a real squeeze. Who knows? That's all
Yeah.
guesswork. But it's what's not guesswork is these charts that Gunner's showing up. And I bet, we got hundreds of people on the call right now. I bet only a few of us were looking at green, quote unquote, green new scam companies. So it's an
Yeah.
interesting spot to look for the summer.
Like, I hadn't thought about FSLR until a couple weeks ago.
Tell you all that Loch Ness
Right. Yeah.
monster over there.
It's just not on the radar, I don't think. And it shouldn't be. I mean, it just wasn't doing anything of interest. So, I mean, the fact that this thing is taken off and that it's still going is pretty interesting. So I'm interested to see who gets dragged along with it and what becomes of a big move like this. Because in a market like this where you have a lot of big tech names that are overextended, I'd like to stay one step ahead and be thinking about like what could be next right here instead of, like I said, jumping on something like, oh, let's buy NVIDIA at $1,100 and see what happens after these runaway gaps right here. Not my cup of tea.
We will see. All right. We've got other sectors. There's stuff moving, Gunner. I want you to go wherever you want here, but we've got metals are moving. You've got some open picks in your trading desk portfolio. Anything else you like for week over week looks?
I mean, metals are back. There were some gut checks last week, and you can see how silver has absorbed it. This big line right here was from the breakout above $26 that happened back in April, and you see the throwback to that zone after it kind of got a little bit ahead of itself and then just really took off again. Well, last week, Wednesday and Thursday were big reset days, kind of across the board for precious and industrial metals. You can see silver was down almost 4%, and then it followed that up with another 2% decline. It just got too hot. And again, it doesn't really surprise me that much because with all the extra eyeballs that are on silver now, which was, a dead trade for so many years, there's going to be added volatility. That's part of the deal. If there's new buyers coming in, there's going to be these gut check moves. It's not going to go up in a straight line, and when it does, it's going to correct kind of hard, maybe, and scare some folks out of it. That's exactly what happened last week. But we saw what happened yesterday. The markets were closed stateside here, but futures markets were open, and silver posted a really nice move, really nice bounce there after that 2-day decline, and then it stabilized on Friday. Was up more than 4% on the day and is following through the upside back toward those highs right there. So you can see the interest is still there. I think we're still in the beginning innings of this new commodity cycle, this new commodity bull cycle that we're in. You can see it in gold. You can see it in silver. Silver is a more dramatic example, obviously, but gold also took the reset. It's not as explosive right now, but I think that things are starting to stack up like we want to see them stack up in a gold bull market. We want to see silver outperforming, and we want to see the gold miners outperforming. GDX, the gold miners ETF right here, almost, not quite a picture perfect throwback to that former breakout zone right there, as you would expect on something like this. So lost its footing on Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday down. Broke down below 35, but quickly picked it back up and moved, and now gapped higher and is holding on to those gains, up more than 2% today. I think the miners are just getting started too. We're early in all of this, and I think it will continue. And there's going to be some back and forth, obviously. And like I said, miners, silver, you're going to see some of these gut check moves. You're going to see some of the throwbacks. And when I say throwback, I mean just this retest of these breakout areas, of these resistance areas that are turned into support once it breaks out above there, and then the buyers come back in. I would not be surprised if this quickly extends back up toward 37 and beyond and really pushes here. Maybe it's the summer of gold. Maybe it's not the summer of renewable energy or green energy stuff. Maybe it's the summer of metals again. Copper is kind of the same idea right here. We have an FCX trade on um, with the trading desk, and it did pretty much the exact same thing. Freeport had been on an absolute tear since March. It consolidated and then broke higher, and then big gut check move as copper reset right there last Wednesday. It was down almost 6%, and then it just sort of hung out down here. And I was telling folks, like, okay, this is it. Like, if it can kind of hang on to this area right here and we get a bounce, we're going to be okay. And if not, we're just going to have to ditch it and move on. Today, we got that nice strong bounce right here. Hopefully, this means that it's going to continue higher and it's going to take out those former highs there around 55 and continue to move right there. I like these throwback moves. It sucks getting caught up in them sometimes, especially when you're sitting on some nice gains in your trades and they kind of get reset in your face like that. But if you have some time left, you can kind of ride them out. And that's what we're attempting to do here, back in the green and moving in the direction we needed to move in. And so I like what I'm seeing throughout the sector there. Base metals, precious metals, it's all good. And I think it's the market is proving its resilience in these groups right here. Last year, if it was last summer and we saw like a throwback move in silver after a nice move higher, it probably would just continue to chop along. But I think we're in a different market now that we've seen these breakouts start to stick and move higher, and with gold up all the way above 2,300 now, which is still kind of amazing to think about. These breakout moves are going to stick more. And it's a bull market. It's a commodities bull market, and we got to respect that. And I think miners are going to be really good trades for weeks and months to come. We'll be able to continue to dip back into the well with a lot of these names moving forward. And then the real pure play in the copper space, SCCO, it's a pricey one, but it's doing the same thing here. So I like what I'm seeing throughout this group right here. Matt, is there any other precious metals that you have your eye on that you like that you wanted to talk about?
Well, WPM was one from the comments. That's Wheaton, if you want to pull up WPM. If anybody has any other precious metals tickers, just go ahead and throw them in the chat there.
Yeah,
That's a royalty play. That's they're looking good.
Are they silver or are they just?
Yeah, they're silver. It's a silver royalty play.
Yeah, the royalty.
Same thing with, like, I would look up like the CDE, Hecla, HL. I mean, those are the ones that I like. And then if you get into gold, I don't know. Nova Gold was always one of my favorites back in the day.
You got to pull out all the old tickers. But yeah,
Yeah.
we're seeing a lot of charts like this, and obviously this is one of the stronger ones. And it's nice to see that, again, you can go back and you can see these moves, these big red candles that have popped up, and the buyers have come in every single time at higher and higher prices. Doesn't get more bullish than that. People want to buy at higher prices. That's bullish. That keeps that line moving from bottom left to top right on your screen, and that's what you want to see. It's almost back there to those pre-gut check highs from last week. Beautiful looking chart. Can't beat it.
All right, how's Hecla? Pull up Hecla. I said it now. Now the comments are rolling in.
Same thing. I mean, and yeah, I know it's tough to see these reset moves, especially if you're in the stock, But the fact that that it's catching and up 6% today, the buyers are there. You're going to get these moves. Like, that's an ugly candle right there, obviously, from back in April. You got a little bit of that here in early May, and then you get a little bit of this, but at the same time, you zoom out, like, there's a change in trend happening here. And I mean, I think this is still very much intact. This move from late February right here. The buyers are coming in at the exact right times and picking this thing back up every time that it drops. So looks good to me.
Yeah. Here's a couple other tickers. PAAS. That's Pan American.
Pan American.
Yep.
Yeah, it's already up. It's already above its old highs right there. I mean, the silver stocks are on the move.
Royal Gold, it's RGLD.
RGLD, yeah, no, that one. Yeah, gold's lagging a little bit, but again, I'm not worried about that. I'm much more interested in the fact that, like, silver is leading. That's nice to see. I think if you want to make the argument that, like, we're in a real precious metals bull market, we got to have silver, like, making these big moves, and it's doing that. So I think that's just adding fuel to the fire.
Yep. And then the last one was FNB. Franco Nevada.
FNV.
Yeah,
Yeah, kind
you
of
know,
the
that's
same thing. Like the gold stuff is lagging a little bit. The charts don't look bad at all, but the silver names are the ones that are breaking out to new highs today, while gold still has a little bit of work to do.
yeah.
So I don't hate that at all. Like the money is flowing there, and if people are getting into silver right now, I think that's great for the entire metal sector.
Yeah. We'll see how long the narrative can go, but I think the narrative is just inflation's coming. It ain't leaving. It's staying. It's sticky. And whoever wins in November, it's going to stay no matter what. And people are starting to buy in on it.
I don't, but I mean, I don't think it's loud yet, though. Do you? I mean, I think
No,
we're in kind of a bubble where that's always kind of a rumbling narrative in the worlds that we exist in. But like outside of us, I really haven't seen a lot of rumblings about stuff like that. And
would you
like,
call us a smart bubble? Are we smart?
I sometimes
Every now and then the bubble, they let a couple dumb people into the bubble,
that's
the smart
okay.
bubble.
You need everybody. You need all kinds in your bubbles. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I think that we're kind of biased in the news that we consume. I don't know if these ideas that you're talking about that have been percolating in our circles are really out there, truly out there in the mainstream like they were. It definitely doesn't feel like it felt in the aughts when that's all people talked about was
Yeah.
how silver was going up every single day and how gold was going to break 2000, all that stuff. I mean, in the heyday of that trade, that was a major talking point every single day on the financial media. And I think it's still crickets right now. I mean, you still have NVIDIA to watch. Why would you be talking about, you know,
It's true. That's what Enrique's saying in the comments. He's like, they're all just talking NVIDIA,
right?
GameStop, AMC. Like,
Yeah.
there's no room for these inflation gold and silver trades out there.
Sorry. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Okay, where to next? Do you have another play in the portfolio? You want to cover that one? And again, I say this a lot of times often, but top trades, this is more general. This is out to the public. This is not Gunner's paid publication, but we cover the portfolio there. You're not going to get the buy and sell info, so we're not worried about anything. But these are stocks that Gunner is interested in and keeps track of, so we might as well talk about them.
We can talk about Hood. So I have a bullish trade on in Hood. That's Robin Hood.
Robinhood, ooh, that's looking good.
For those who are interested, it's looking better. Yeah. And again, Robinhood is not a silver miner, but it did have a pretty hard 2-day reset along with a lot of other stuff. Wednesday it was down 6%, and then it followed it up with a 2% move lower on Thursday. Friday morning it started the day by dipping down below those lows, and I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to cut this trade. It looks like it's falling apart, and then it slowly started creeping higher, and you can see that it was up 6% and ate into that big red candle, and now it's attempting to get its act back together here now above this 2050 mark right here. I really like to see it break 21 in a hurry and prove that it wants to extend higher from here. It's just sort of dancing around break even like a lot of stuff is doing today. But I really like this chart. I really like the stock right here. I don't think people are talking about Robinhood enough. I think it's a pretty good company. I think Fundamental Matt might have some good things to say about it if he dug into it. I think it's ripe for a much bigger move higher. And if we zoom out and we look at this chart, you can see what a disaster it's been for Robinhood. I mean, this was a COVID era IPO that IPO'd at the exact right or wrong time, depending upon which way you look at it.
The good news is they didn't SPAC, right? If you were
Right.
SPAC, good luck. You're done. Yeah, at least you IPO'd at the wrong time. You
Right.
didn't
So I
SPAC
mean,
at the wrong
this
time.
is a typical IPO flameout chart that you'll see occasionally, where you get a hyped up stock in a new or reimagined industry right here that IPO'd around it came to the market around $35 and then promptly ran to $70, and then it never saw that again. So it slowly leaked lower and then quickly leaked lower into 2022. It got caught up in the 2022 bear market and got beat up pretty badly, as you would think it would. It's been, a growthy tech type stock, a Kathy Wood adjacent type name. Those did not survive intact in 2022. Didn't really participate in the rekindled bull last year. 2023, it had some ups and downs. It looked like it wanted to break out around this time last year, around 2023, when it was poking its head out above those swing highs from 2022. It failed. I I guess earnings were the catalyst for that, and then right back down to the bottom of its range. Well, now it has cleared that, and I think it's safe to say that I think the base has been built, and it's broken above. Oh, I'm glad this is already red. That kind of gives us a little differentiator there. So it's already broken out of the space, and it has thrown back or reset back to that $16, 16 to 16.50 range right there, where it broke out of that base, and now it wants higher again. And it's sitting right at that round number of $20. I think this is a point where this stock could really cut loose. I don't really know how the narrative is going to develop for a name like this, but at the same time, a cheapie that has survived a few earnings releases now in a row and has built this multi-year base right here, going back to the very start of 2022. And keep in mind, this stock had entered its bear market long before the semiconductors rolled over in like what, December, January 21, 22, right there when the bear market really got rocking.
Yeah.
This thing was already plummeting. So I think now it's starting to find its way and it's starting to break out and get some renewed interest right here. I don't think that the current market conditions hurt this stock at all. I think that the fact that we have meme stocks popping back up on the radar, albeit kind of briefly over the past couple weeks, people are talking about it. I think retail traders are still out there, and this is the ultimate retail trader type stock. If you want to kind of build a narrative off of that, I think you can do it. So I think it has a good pitch, and it's a cheapie, and it's beginning to really extend from that base right there. It's right around a round number of $20. I know I have it as a trade, but I also like this as a, as a longer position type trade from here from $20. I think this is a safe spot to try to buy shares with a tight stop and just to see how far it can run on you over the next few months. I like it trying to eat away at some of this massive drawdown here from the fall of 21, from that third quarter when it went from $40 to $20 and got cut in half right there. It's got plenty of room to run.
All right, I like where you're going with this because it's not often that we get a buy and hold, a position trade. And when you say position trade, what do you mean exactly? Just for anyone out there that's
longer than a swing trade, you can hold on to it for a few months and let it develop, give it some wiggle room.
Yeah.
A swing trade, I'm only looking to hold for a momentum push. But for something like this, I think it's right for multiple time frames right here.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that. So just as a normal stock play, buy and hold. And again, this isn't something that's going to be in the trading desk per se, but a buy and hold stock, this one looks like it's got a decent entry potentially right now. And you've got a decent amount of upside just for holding stock.
Yeah, and I mean,
I like it.
Accumulating this thing. I mean, it's gotten a lot. I mean, you can see the big green bars right here where people have been buying this thing. And that's why on a low volume week, like I wasn't too quick to pull the exit, pull my parachute. What do you call it? What do you call that thing?
Pull the ripcord.
Ripcord. Didn't want to pull the ripcord quite yet on this thing last week, since it had so much buying interest, and it really pushed nicely above 20 toward 21 right there, and it did catch itself. And you're going to get those resets, like I said, and you can see that there's some ugly red candles sprinkled along in here, but at the same time, I think this one's ripe for a major change in trend. It's well off its lows now. It's doubled off of where it was in late 2023 in December right there. It's gone from $10 to $20, and now maybe it could really get going right here. Like you see a stock like this double, and you might think, it's over, but I think this could just be getting started.
Yeah, and again, fundamentally speaking, right, it's kind of like Coinbase, but it's both financial markets and crypto. They have a nice user interface. It's on your phone. It's for those younger traders that want to do whatever. And most likely, if it's like Coinbase, there are some generous fees being generated. So there's probably a story there that they're able to make some money as well.
I think it's easy just to argue that it's captured a new generation of investors who are kind of hooked on the app. And like I guess like kind of a more cynical take on it is like, you look at things like, the DraftKings generation, all these young people that do sports betting, and are they approaching like stock trading kind of in the same haphazard fashion? Maybe. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Maybe it's different types of folks, but I do think that there's that narrative developing around it, and this is the stock that sort of captures that demographic.
Yeah. Okay, so here's an audible from what we were talking about earlier today in the office. Would you want to bring up, because there's another sector that's kind of blowing up, or it has been blowing up, but just want to get your take on it, the insurance space.
Before we talk
If
about
you,
that, before we talk about that, I need to talk about crypto. I think that's
all right,
more, if you don't
do it.
mind.
That's a better segue. That
Okay.
makes way more sense than insurance stocks. But now, what I just said is a nice teaser. Like coming up, we're going to talk about insurance stocks that are in this crazy bull market. But before we
Um,
get there, we're going to talk crypto.
yeah, so I think crypto is in an interesting spot right now. After last week, uh, we've talked about Bitcoin being in this big, broad chop zone that it's been stuck in for some time right here. I got bulled up on the crypto miners off this little whoopsie daisy false breakdown, whatever you want to call it, right here. But it didn't really get legs until the 15th, and then we had a nice big push higher right here, um, where we poked our head back above 70K, and it's been consolidating ever since. Had a decent move yesterday, higher, kind of doing the opposite today, where it's down a little bit more than a grand, down to 68K. Feels like it's only a matter of time before this thing really tests the top of this range right here in those all-time highs. That's your all-time highs right there, back at 73 and change. The fact that it got back above 70 in a hurry, and we're back in the upper half of this big consolidation zone, this big chop zone right here, I think looks really good for it. Um, I'm always kind of on the lookout to see if there's any type of disconnect between like what's happening with like the crypto miners and what's happening with crypto itself. And this morning, with crypto being down, and I haven't looked in a couple hours, but crypto lower today in the red, but crypto miners were higher earlier. So let's see if our riots and everything else is, yeah, and they are pushing higher. So riots up like 4%. Mara looks a lot better and is up 4.5. Here's Clean Spark right here. Clean Spark looks pretty good, curling up right there, close to $19. So you have your Bitcoin miners starting to curl higher right here. They've been kind of lagging. Are they just playing catch up, or are they kind of like leading us toward like a bigger crypto breakout? Like what's going on? I don't really know what's the tail and what's the dog when it comes to some of this crypto stuff, and you try to figure out who moves what. I think sometimes they flip spaces. Sometimes the coins lead, sometimes the miners lead.
Yep.
Um, but this is interesting to me that these stocks are firming up, and they're producing some pretty decent looking gains on a day like today, when everything else is just sort of, percolating, and only Nvidia is moving higher. Crypto miners look really good. So are they turning a corner? Are they turning a corner, and are they predicting, or are they hinting that we could get a bigger bump higher in the big coins this week? I'm still bulled up on Ethereum and the
Yeah,
Ethereum
let's pull up
trade.
the Ethereum chart. That was a comment.
Yeah, so Ethereum, ever since this big, huge candle right here, and that was on the day where all that scuttlebutt came out about the Ethereum ETF approvals.
Yep.
But it has leaked higher from there. I mean, it hasn't given back anything practically. It's gotten a little wonky. Like on a day like last Thursday, it was kind of all over the place, but managed to finish in the green. But this is right back to the top of its range. And again, look, we're still well below those all-time highs right there from November of 21, which was near 5K. And we're still below 4,000 right now. I mean, I think Ethereum has demonstrated that when it goes fast. And if we are entering a new bullish period for crypto right now, is Ethereum going to be the silver to Bitcoin's gold? Do we have a situation where ETH is just going to burn rubber and blast higher and start lap? It's been a while, right? I mean, when was the last time Ethereum was significantly outperforming Bitcoin for any major length of time? It's been since 2021, right? I don't think we've had a
Yeah.
period where it's been like, yeah, this thing's really rocking and rolling for without like resetting. Maybe we're about to enter one of those times. Maybe it's going to take a break of 4,000, because that's where it failed back in March. But I'm very interested to see how that goes. And if it does do that, I mean, does that mean that the crypto miners are also blasting higher, or is it just going to be Ethereum that outperforms? I don't know, but I'm interested to find out. I think that's going to give us some trade ideas too from this group.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just a matter of time. I mean, Bitcoin seems to be the biggest, most legitimate, but everyone, anyone that you listen to, Ethereum's more usable. It makes more sense for a long-term actual currency. So when that narrative starts going, I think the term as Enrique put in the chat, the flippening.
The flippening.
They have all these. This is why crypto keeps winning and it keeps on staying so top of mind for everyone. They have all these cool terms.
They have good
The
vocabulary.
flippening is
Yeah.
when the Ethereum market is bigger market cap wise than the Bitcoin market. So that's we're still ways away.
We're a ways away, right? We have to be.
Yeah, but that's why it's exciting. That would be like, oh, silver is going to be more higher market cap than gold. Like that's the
Yeah.
flipping is such a great idea.
So riddle me this. We all know about the big price targets on Bitcoin. Everybody talks about, I mean, I think it's kind of passe to say Bitcoin 100K right now because that's not that far away, right? So people are bumping up
Yeah.
those targets. I know Tom Lee was on TV he's from Fundstrat, big crypto bull, big tech bull too. Is he at 150K now or something like that? And if so, like, what's the time frame of those? I think most people have sort of said, okay, Bitcoin 100K by the end of the year. That's kind of a foregone conclusion.
Yep.
What's the big number for Ethereum is my question, because you don't really hear that much about it. And that's another one of the reasons why I think that's going to be added fuel to the fire for an Ethereum catch-up trade, is because everybody's been talking about Bitcoin the entire first half of the year with the halving and with the Bitcoin ETFs. And then finally, Ethereum gets a little bit of love with the rumors of the ETF approvals being imminent. What's the big round number? Is it 10,000? Like, what are people saying about Ethereum? I don't know. I'm asking the
I feel
chat.
like it's probably just 5,000. I mean, again, it's like if we're talking about the equivalent of 100K, that's the closest round number that makes sense
Sure.
percentage wise. Same thing with Bitcoin. It'd basically be the same amount of upside there.
I didn't know if there was
5K doesn't sound as fun.
if there was a bigger bull narrative than that. If somebody was out there saying Ethereum's going to more than double and it's going to be 10K by December or something like that.
Yeah.
Somebody smarter than me. I don't know.
All right. There was a heavy tease for insurance stocks, which now seems deflating. This is not as exciting now. Boo. If people could boo out loud on this show, this is where all the boos would come in. IAK is one of the ETFs. Can we just pull that up again? It's one of these things where this connects some narrative and some what's happening in America with a stock chart. But insurance rates have been going off the charts, by the way, and it's no surprise that insurance companies are making a lot of money. And look at these little guys. Like
I mean,
that's the ETF. That's all of them added up.
I mean, it's a nice looking chart. I'll give you that. Very steady mover. But I mean, like you said, like I think the narrative is there. I don't know how fast some of these stocks are going to be. I mean, there's what's the one that Buffett is in? Chubb.
Chubb. I don't know what the ticker is though.
I don't know the ticker either.
Well, we're no good.
But these typically aren't the stocks that I will trade necessarily, but I like you weaving the narrative for me. I like the fundamental math of this.
Just something to keep an eye out. I do think these are top trades per se, but we might have missed it a little bit, and they're more slow and steady as opposed to explosive. The pivoting and sort of rotation trades you're talking about in Green New Scam, China, maybe the miners and metals, like those are much more explosive than this. But this is just one of those things where you kind of blinked over a year or two, because it wasn't that far since 2020 when insurance companies were writing you like checks. They're like, oh, we knew you were trapped in your house, so we're going to write you like, here's 10% off your insurance or whatever. And now all of a sudden, I think they're like, hey, is everyone asleep? Let's jack the rates on everybody. And they're just doing it, and no one can do anything about it. And here we go. And that's Chubb. So Chubb is the Buffett play, right?
Alert viewer just sent me a direct message that this is CB is Chubb. This is the one that Berkshire.
Oh yeah, it was in the comments. I missed it. Sorry, guys.
Buying right here. But yeah, I mean that's a great looking chart. Obviously, this was probably like the Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah.
The Berkshire Hathaway Woodstock right here. But at the same time, you can see how like it's a nice looking chart, and it's strong when you have a big gap up like this and a name like Chubb, and it hasn't really given much of it back. It's still like not going into that gap. It's not closing the window right there. It's just sort of floating along right there. So I mean, great looking chart. Probably not something that I would be super excited to put a swing trade in on, but like the buy and hold folks, it seems to be a pretty big theme and worth running with.
And then one of these questions again, I know this is my topic, but if we were asking you, Gunnar, would you be looking at, say you wanted to get into insurance trades, would these be more like a buy and hold stock trade as opposed to a swing trade?
Yeah, I think so. I think we could
Okay.
always, I think we could, most of the time, during the majority of market conditions, I could find some other group that is probably going to move a little bit faster. It's going to have a little bit more juice to it than these stocks. So I would typically stay away from something like this. And
Yeah.
maybe that's not the way to think about it, but that's the way I go about things. I'd rather be in something like a Robinhood than a CB. So
Yeah. All right. Well, it's noon here on the East Coast, so we're going to wrap things up. But before we completely wrap up, I'm going to do a shameless plug. We've got Paradigm Press. We have our whiskey bar. We do these whiskey bars ever so often. Tomorrow is Wednesday, so don't forget that. We're in a short week. Tomorrow's Wednesday. Wednesday and whiskey, W&W, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. We're doing a whiskey bar. So if you want to hear, this is kind of outside of the normal trading zone area and more in the Jim Rickards camp. But we got all the analysts from the Rickard space. We got them all lined up in a panel, and we are hitting the go button at 3:30 tomorrow. So keep your eyes peeled for anything that says whiskey bar, links, that kind of stuff. And you can hop on there. And then on Thursday, we've got Jim Rickards, an exclusive where he's talking election predictions. We know we're months out, but it's some big moving pieces, and fundamental Matt eats it up. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to my little spiel. Hope to see you at the whiskey bar tomorrow. And if not, I won't blame, I won't, no hard feelings, but you better show up next Tuesday for top trades. We'll have Gunnar back. We'll see what's happening week over week. Gunnar, you're doing a good job in these choppy markets, and you are absolutely, as always, keeping us ahead of a lot of the rotations and some of the new sectors and charts that are looking up. So thanks for everyone for the great comments. And Gunnar, thank you for your time, man.
thanks, guys. See you.
See y'all.